I'm Dana Moriello, and you're listening to This Is a Thing, the podcast where I interview entrepreneurs who started unusual businesses and found success on their own terms. We talk about how they got their wild ideas, how they decided to act on them, and how those ideas have grown. Today, we're talking to Joe Hession, founder and CEO of Snow Partners. Joe started his career at 14 as a parking attendant at the New Jersey ski resort Mountain Creek. He fell in love with the industry and never left it. He spent decades building deep expertise in ski and outdoor hospitality, going from parking attendant to COO before taking a big risk and striking out on his own. With $60,000 in savings, he started a company called Snow Partners that today advises ski resorts on operational issues, offers operational software for resorts, runs Mountain Creek, and operates Big Snow, North America's largest indoor ski dome. That company has since grown into 7 businesses, doing over $100 million in annual revenue. I was excited to have Joe on today because he has made 2 wild ideas a reality that many people doubted. And I've had a front row seat to both of them, growing up in New Jersey and now living in New York City. Mountain Creek's water park was formerly called Action Park. And if you grew up in the area, you know exactly what that means. It was wild, a little dangerous, and plagued with challenges, but it was also beloved. Joe kept what was special about it and built it into a strong, successful business. And if you spent any time in the New York area over the last 20 years, you probably remember America Dream Mall's enormous vacant ski slope sitting there year after year, earning nicknames like the mess in the Meadowlands. People made fun of it. Nobody thought it could happen. Then Joe and team stepped in and turned it into a thriving, beloved indoor ski area called Big Snow. Joe makes wild ideas happen. Enjoy the conversation. Joe, so happy to talk to you today. Now, fellow New Jersey native, you grew up in Vernon, New Jersey, and started working in your local ski resort and my local ski resort, Mountain Creek, as a parking attendant when you were 14. Now, I am so curious, when you were 14 working there, did you have a master vision for the rest of your life and what that would look like? What did you think at that time that your working adult life would look like?
No, being an entrepreneur, I'm not 100% sure what tomorrow is going to bring, let alone back then having a master plan. That would be way too organized for me. Really, at the end of the day, what was interesting about that first job is I was a pretty bad student. I didn't excel in school, and I wasn't the best athlete. And so I found myself kind of missing what made me special, what made me good, like what was my purpose. And when I had my first job, it instantly clicked. I love doing this. I love being involved with people. I love hospitality. I love busy days. And I did really well. And it was the first time that I was like, this is really special. And this is what I want to do with my life. So I didn't know what it was then, but I knew that working and being part of hospitality was definitely probably in my future.
Do you remember a moment when that clicked for you?
Yeah. Like actually, someone who works with our company now by the name of Frank DeBerry at the time was the rental shop manager. And I was a rental shop tech. I was 15 years old and I got employee of the week. And I remember when I got the employee of the week, it was this moment of like, I did something really good and it really made me feel special. And, you know, when you're not doing great in school and you're not the first string on the hockey team, you know, it's kind of like, it's good to get that kind of reinforcement.
So speaking of the journey from there, you leave the nest, you go to college, but you come back. You come back to Mountain Creek. What brought you back?
Yeah, so college for me was also an interesting one. I loved work so much that I focused around continuing to work and learn and be in the ski business, and I went to college kind of as the side. So the whole time I was in college, I worked full time. I like to joke that when I was in high school, I had a weekly salary. I was a manager of a department when I was in high school. So I actually traveled around. And the reason I went to SUNY Geneseo in upstate New York was because they opened up a water park there called Roseland Water Park. And that same gentleman I mentioned, Frank DeBerry, was the GM there. And, you know, at a young age, I went up there and got to work at the water park. And then I actually went to a community college there called Finger Lakes Community College and transferred into Geneseo from there. And college was one of those things where I knew I needed to do it. But like I was so focused on this thing that I loved to do, which was operating ski resorts, water parks, rental shops at the time, that was really my main focus.
So you were so passionate about this hospitality industry. We won't say how many decades past 14 you are now, but let's say it's a few.
Yeah.
Was there ever any moment in that journey when you doubted that passion or that seemed to waver?
Yeah, 100%. And there's two times where I've had massive moments in my life that I had to make a decision, and it was the hard decision, but now looking back, it was so right, the right decision. So first was I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know why I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go to law school. I felt like that was the right thing to do. I felt like that's what would make my parents proud. Working at a young age at a resort, it was kind of like, hey, when are you going to get a real job? Which I'm very specific to with the people that I get to work with, because it very much is a real job. And what's funny is the people that have now become lawyers and doctors and all these things, they call me all the time and they say, do you know the best job I ever had in my life was when I worked as a lifeguard in the water park? And I'm like, I know, because I hear it from everybody. But there was this moment where I had to make the decision. Am I pursuing law and I'm going down that road, or am I pursuing staying in this? And society and kind of everyone else, I think, was pushing me to this. My parents, a lot of credit to them. They wanted me to stay in the business I love so much. So that was decision number one. Decision number two was the moment I became an entrepreneur. So I had a really successful career working for a publicly traded company, a company that I worked for after college and kind of through college was called IntraWest. They were the largest ski company in the world. And it was really great. I learned so much from them. I learned such great things. They gave me great exposure to people, organizational behavior, how people work, how to be part of a big corporation. And then they sold the business to a local family who then owned Mountain Creek. So I stopped working for that big company, worked for a small company. And really my now wife, then girlfriend, was like, you've always talked about being an entrepreneur. This is the time. And I was 30 years old, and I decided to quit my job to start a business. And that was a moment where, my mom unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but she used to love to tell this story that she cried and begged me not to make the mistake of trying to start a business. You shouldn't do it. You have such a good thing. You're a COO and you're 30 years old. You own a house. Why would you risk this? And I just felt that I needed to do it, or else I'd always regret it. And my wife, Hallie, was a huge inspiration to push me to do that for sure.
So for that first decision of not being a lawyer, which what you said so resonates, this idea of the thing I should do versus the thing I want to do, what made you get past the naysayers and get past all those shoulds and commit to this career path you're on?
It's funny. I'm talking about this gentleman by the name of Frank DeBerry a lot, which early days of my career, he's such a big piece of it. But he went through the same situation. So he wanted to be a doctor. He worked in an emergency room, and he instantly realized it wasn't his passion. And his best friend at the time, the best man in his wedding, was a lawyer. He was a DA. And he said, can you get on the phone with him and just talk to him about it? And he's like, why do you want to be a lawyer? And he went through the list of all the reasons I want. He goes, none of that's going to happen. That's not what actually happens that way. You're going into this thinking it's this dream scenario. And unless you really like reading contracts and writing lots of contracts, like, it's really not going to. And he literally talked me out of it because he didn't love his job, which, no offense to lawyers, I have a lot of lawyer friends. I do love to mess with professionals as much as possible. I feel like it's my job as an entrepreneur, but he talked me out of it, and I'm really glad he did.
So you stay in the field. Correct me if I'm wrong, but fast forward 2012, you decide to leave Mountain Creek to start this business. It sounds like your mom's telling you, what are you doing? You're getting all these mixed messages. Tell me about that decision and how you made it.
One is I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've loved the idea of owning my own business, being able to grow it. And to be honest, one of the things I had an issue with in college at SUNY Geneseo in the business program was, how do you go from working in the business to owning the business? You think someone would just tell you, but the reality is, the answer is, there's no linear way of how that happens. And that's exactly where I found myself. I'd found myself becoming an expert in the field. I didn't want to become a specialist. I wanted to understand how the whole business worked. And my wife, which then girlfriend, she had a similar mindset. We were at one night watching Monday Night Football when we first met, and we're both big Giants fans. So we're watching the New York Giants, and we're kind of going through, what we want to do with life. And we just clicked on, anything's possible. Maybe we could do this. It would be cool not to have boundaries or rules or have to live in PTO days and things like that. She was working as the PR person at the resort. and then left to start a video business, which, this is 2011, where she left a year before me. And she instantly did super well. She picked up a ton of clients. She had nonstop work. That led to her eventually getting an Emmy. So she is an Emmy Award winner. She did it. She was super successful. She's like, hey, the pool's warm. Why don't you jump in? And then she literally talked me into, you should do it. She also moved across the country. She moved to Colorado, and I wanted to move to Colorado too. And there's this moment of, do I move out there to get a job, or do I move out there to start a business? And that's what we did. We started a business in 2012 called Snow Operating.
So you decide to make the move out to Colorado with your wife at that point. What was the initial vision for what Snow Operating would be?
Well, that was the wild part. I wasn't sure. Here's kind of how we figured out what to do. I went to the national conference for the National Skiers Association, and they gave out this massive award for converting of first-time skiers to second-time skiers. And it ends up that 85% of people who try skiing and snowboarding their first time don't come back a second time. And, one of the stories that I didn't tell you was back when I worked for that big publicly traded company, they sent me to become a Lean Six Sigma black belt. So I became a process expert, and I got to work across all the resorts. So I kind of thought to myself, why don't I take the biggest industry problem, because I have no money, right? So I had no money to start the business. I had $60,000. This is what we started with. And so here I am in 2012. We have to find value. And I knew all the people in the ski industry, and I knew they had this problem. So I did a Lean Six Sigma project on why don't people come back skiing a second time? And if we were going to create solutions to help make that better, what would the solutions be? And I actually reached out to a bunch of industry friends in Colorado and said, hey, can I use your snowcat? Can I use this? Can I use that? To kind of have them help me try out new ideas. And what we found was there were a bunch of things. There were a few really clear solutions that you could actually make skiing instantly more successful if you change the way you thought about it. So what we worked on was, how in the first day do we literally teach them nothing other than a good time to want to come back a second time? We ended up working with a psychologist out of San Francisco who studied the psychology of fun. And we found out there was 4 different types of fun. There was easy fun, hard fun, people fun, and life-changing fun. And we focused on easy fun and hard fun. And it ends up that skiing and snowboarding is a hard fun activity. And what that means is it's a lifestyle. It's something that you do and you fall in love with it. But in order to get good at it, it's impossible. It's kind of like the idea of how many people have tried to play the guitar and give up because it's not like it looks like on TV where everyone's just playing the guitar. It's actually really hard. Guitar is hard fun. Easy fun is like snow tubing, right? That's something everyone can do and it's easy, but it's not a lifestyle. Skiing's a lifestyle. So we tried to figure out how to deliver first-time guests easy fun and then let them make the decision to hard fun. And that led to us working with 150 resorts around the world. We've designed some of the most legendary ski beginner areas, rental shops, children's programs, things like that. We've gone to work all around the world, all from those ideas.
What I hear in what you're saying, so many amazing nuggets to pull out. One, you focused on a really specific problem. You could have gone after, we're just going to make skiing better. We're going to make ski resorts earn more. But you focused on something very specific, coupled that with an existing network, coupled that with being at the right time in your career where you had the capital and the wherewithal to act on this. It seems like a lot of things were coming together for this to be the right idea at the right time for you.
Yeah, someone told me once, it's where preparation and opportunity meet is where success happens. And it was kind of like, I didn't know what was going to happen or how it was going to happen. One of my pet peeves is when someone has no experience in the field, doesn't even understand how it works, but they have the solution to make it better. And I'm always like, why don't you go get a job first and maybe see if you change your idea? Because I have so many times people, especially skiing, because it's such a cool sport and it's such an interesting sport, people literally will show up and they'll be like, oh, I have this idea, but some of them have barely ever even skied, let alone been to a ski resort. So to me, it was all this time of, IntraWest, that publicly traded company that I got to work for 12 years. I took so much from them on their dime to learn, make mistakes, figure out how little things work, ask all the silly questions. But then most importantly was the network. I got to meet so many people. And, people always say, well, in order to start a business, you need money. And I'll challenge that. We have a company that this year will do over 100 million in revenue. And I will tell you that we started with $60,000. And the biggest thing we invested into the business was credibility. It was credibility, relationships, networking. It was people were like, oh, they have good ideas. That group of people really knows, they're passionate, they love what they're doing. They would hire us for projects. And early on, like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? Like, there was a lot of hard nights. There still are a lot of hard nights. It doesn't ever get easier, but I will tell you that there is no better decision I ever made to do this in 2012. And, and now that we employ 2,500 people, we have a much bigger company, but, we still take that credibility piece to the bank as number one. Like, credibility will always be more important than dollars in our business, for sure.
And it sounds like such a thoughtful decision when you started this business. What was the vision in your mind of what winning looked like to you for this business? What was success if it really worked?
It was just surviving. I loved what I was doing so much. I wanted to make an impact to the problem I was trying to solve. I was fully focused on the problem. A lot of times people are like, well, was it about, making money or growing revenue or doing this? And, I've always said to people that, to me, money is like a cat. So if you try to pet the cat aggressively, the cat runs away. But if you get really focused doing something else and you get really into it, the cat all of a sudden wants your attention. And money, I think, works that way. So I looked at it as it was more about surviving and trying to fix the problem I was trying to fix. The money came along, not as quick as you would imagine. That first business was not our biggest business. That one was can we survive to get to the next year? Can we keep funding the opportunity to keep doing the work we love to do? And luckily for us, that kept happening.
And you said that this was unequivocally a great decision, best decision. What was the point in that process where you realized, oh, this was a good decision? Good on me. This is working and what I wanted it to be.
I love to tell like the story, like it was the grind and this, and all of a sudden there was this moment like in a movie. It was literally it might have been the first week after I left my job. I moved to Vail. So Hallie, my wife, we weren't ready to move in together. So I moved to Vail. She lived in Boulder. And I went up to my apartment that I rented. That was part of the 60 grand I invested in, was renting a place to live. So like, it wasn't just investment in the business, it was surviving. So I moved out there, and I remember I woke up one day, I go, what am I going to do today? And in my corporate world, I'd have meetings all day, every day. I'm not sure what any of those meetings ever got done, but I know I was always meeting and talking to people. And I had this epiphany, like day one, of I only have to do what adds value. Every day, I only add value to whatever it is I'm trying to do. And if I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it. I don't have anyone to worry about. I don't have to write a report of what I did this week. I only have to do what's important to me and our business and what we're trying to do. And at first it was just me and Hallie. So it was like, what's important to us to survive? And that was a moment where I'm like, wow, what a great way to work. All of a sudden, all the bureaucracy, the politics, the one-on-one meetings that go in circles, or the politicking around the office, all of these things disappeared. And it was pure value of how can we actually add value and do stuff right away. And that was so interesting, inspiring. And to be honest, the biggest struggle now as a CEO of 7 companies is, how do I take the feeling of that guy at 30 years old sitting in a condo in Vail, trying to figure out what to do? How do I take that level of only focus on what's valuable, and let's not get caught up in the politicking or the one-on-one meetings? So we're an odd company. We don't have any one-on-one meetings for that type of stuff. We do everything very planned out. And we try to take all politics out of the kind of work environment, which is very hard to do. But that was the moment when I sat there and said, oh, I only have to do what I have to do. I don't or what I want to do. I don't have to do what someone else is telling me I have to do that I don't believe in. Was a massive moment and really fun.
What a cool way of defining a life well lived, that all of your time is spent doing things that you believe are valuable. Which kind of leads me to 2 other inflection points in your career, which I'm really interested in hearing about, which is 2018, when you have the opportunity to acquire a stake in Mountain Creek and now own and operate your former employer. Tell me about how that opportunity came to be and how you decided to act on it.
What I've realized is, for me, it's never clear. It's never obvious. It's not the way you think it would work. Like, what happened for me is we became super credible. So in 2012, when we started that business, we're designing the learning area at Aspen Snowmass, right? We're Whistler Blackcomb, these famous places that are legendary, really important stuff. And we do keynote speeches. So we've had credibility. And before Mountain Creek, Big Snow American Dream, the indoor snow dome, got bought by the family that owns the Mall of America, the Gurmesian family, 555. And they actually were looking for an operator, but first they wanted a designer. So they hired us to be the designers to come in and design how the facility would operate, because that's what we did back then. And after meeting them and starting to talk with them, they're like, this should be your business. So really, they gave us the first really big opportunity where they were like, you should lease this snow dome. And I was kind of like, I don't really have any money to do that. And like, no, I think you bring enough credibility to the table. I think you will be able to figure it out. So they liked the way we thought. We became business partners. We signed a 20-year lease on that snow dome. Then after that, Mountain Creek went into some financial problems because they had a family that took over ownership who had been involved in the business for a long time but had zero experience in the ski business. And I knew them that way. And again, the credibility relationships, you never know what relationship you have is going to start something down the road. So they were going through this financial problem, and they heard that we leased the snow dome. They thought that was really interesting. And literally that sparked a conversation. They then went into bankruptcy to try to shed some debt they had with the municipality. So we came in from the outside and said, okay, we want to help you. And we had a relationship with the bank as well. So we said, how about we lease, again, we leased the snow dome, and we kind of negotiated that lease over 8 months. So we're really good at understanding how leases work now. And we didn't know how to buy companies, and we also had no money still. So we went in with the bank and said, hey, here's our business plan. Here's what we would do. We want to lease it. So while the company was in bankruptcy, we actually leased the winter part of the ski resort. And we basically said, we'll give you $1 million, which is a crazy low number in the scheme of things. But at the time, we then turned all the dials, took all of our experience, the things we knew, we put it into place. And then we had a huge year. We had good weather on our side, but we also made good decisions. And from that, we were just sitting on a ton of cash, and they were still in bankruptcy. And then they couldn't figure out to get the creditors committee and all these little nuances of bankruptcy, which I had no experience in. But I knew all the people that were on all these committees from the industry. And I also knew the town because I was from the town. I knew the people. The mayor of the town was my brother's lacrosse coach. So I was able to go sit down and say, hey, everyone's upset about this stuff and they want to get it figured out. And I became the peace broker of all the creditors. And then by doing that, I went to the Kaufmans and said, I can take all the money we've made over the last 3 years while you've been losing money in this bankruptcy. I haven't spent any of it. I could put it all into this. And then I can get everyone in line to get it out. But that's going to require us to have 51% ownership and full control of the business. They agreed. We got that through the bankruptcy courts. We actually didn't buy it out of bankruptcy. We came in on the side and reorganized it through bankruptcy. And all this stuff, like, you would look at this and say, did you go to school for this? Did you do it? No. We were just learning as we went, and we were enjoying the process. There were nights where there was no sleeping. There were nights of extreme stress. But then we got that done. We took Mountain Creek out of bankruptcy as the majority owners March 1st, 2020. And I remember I said to our CFO, if we just get through the next 3 months, we're going to be set forever. And then COVID hit 15 days later.
Oh my goodness. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. So it seems like this is a massive inflection point in your business where previous to this, you're mainly consulting and you're helping other people make their businesses more successful. All of a sudden, I imagine this is a step change difference in the number of employees you have, the operational complexity you have. What made you think that at this next stage of your career, you wanted to take on that next level of complexity?
That might be, that might be my biggest strength and weakness at the same time, is when there's an open door, I'm going to walk through it every time. People will say, like, do you want to hear this pitch? I'm like, I want to hear it. You never know what you're going to learn. Maybe something interesting will happen. So for us, the consulting business was really good, but it was really hard to scale. So I was having a scaling issue where I was looking at saying, I'm on the road. I didn't have kids at the time. We were recently married, Hallie and I, back when we bought Mountain Creek. We were just a year into our marriage. And literally there was this moment of like, I can't be on the road 6 months, a year, traveling to all these ski resorts. I want to actually eventually have a normal type life where I actually have roots in a community and actually get to be part of my family. So that was the real driver of why it was interesting. The other thing is it just had massive growth opportunity. We've since then, 4 times the EBITDA. We've turned it into a very successful business, and that has helped us fund other businesses. So it really was a huge point. And the fun part is, if you go back to signing the lease of the Snowdome, I'd said there that we were going to put $1 million in to start it. Now, I made that number up essentially. Like I was hoping I'd eventually make $1 million within the 3 years between now and then, but I wasn't sure if that was going to happen. Mountain Creek instantly made that happen and made that possible. So the dominoes went exactly the way they were supposed to. We certainly didn't plan it that way. It's relationships, it's connections, it's positive attitude, it's walking through the door when the door's open, all of those types of things.
So you mentioned walking through the doors when they're open, and you've walked through some doors that might not have been obvious to other people that they were good doors to walk through. And so I want to talk about Big Snow for a second. And for those that are not familiar, largest indoor ski area in North America, it had been part of a mall project out in the Meadowlands for ages. And there was a lot of conversation that was happening. Is this a good idea? Is it not a good idea? What's going on? So I imagine it was a contentious door, but you decided to walk through it. How was all that noise impacting you, if it was at all, when you made this decision?
I was one of those people. I'm like, does this make sense? Now, when they first was under construction, it was like 2005, I think. And we opened in 2019. So it sat there for 15 years. I think it was called the ugliest building in New Jersey for a long time. It had a really big history. And eventually, as I saw it not succeed, I'm like, yeah, this thing is never going to make sense. And then what ended up happening was it was meeting the family from 555, the people that own the mall, and going and listening to their vision and what they were all about. And I instantly connected with them. I saw their vision of what they were going to do, and they were big thinkers. The fact that they started the Mall of America, they started the West Edmonton Mall, like they had real credibility and they had real backing. I've had a lot of these business mentors in my day, like, the Gramesians are one of them at 555. The uncle of the CEO, who was one of the core 4 founding members, told me the story about how he became an entrepreneur. And they were selling rugs in a strip mall and wanted to make a West Edmonton Mall, which was the original Mall of America. And he went and learned, and they said, you need an anchor. And they said, well, what's an anchor? And they're like, you need like a Nordstrom's. And they were up in Western Canada, and Nordstrom was down in Seattle. So he would drive down and camp out to try to get time with the CEO. The CEO would blow him off, blow him off, blow him off. And eventually he got him to sign a lease and said, fine, if you build this, what you say you're going to build, you'll have Nordstrom. And I listened to his story, which was this like connections, relationships, all the things that we've talked about. And him and I just hit it off, and they've been great partners. So I'd love to say I looked at the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet seemed right, and I thought I could do it. Like, all of those things were also true. Like, I did believe in our business plan, and we did really put a lot of effort into it, and we had a really good performa. But more importantly, I really liked the people that I was becoming partners with, and I liked their general attitudes, and I believed in what they were going to do. And I also believe that if things went really bad, they were going to have our back, which they have. We were the only company out of all of their massive properties that paid rent through COVID. And they brought that up to us early on. They go, you are a huge tenant, but company-wise, very small compared to our massive partners. And you are the only one that hasn't called to say you can't pay. You just keep paying. I go, well, I'll pay till I run out of money. And so since then, that's the type of relationships you have forever, and that just continue to get better.
That was Joe Hession talking about his journey building Snow Partners, acquiring Mountain Creek, and bringing Big Snow to life. The biggest thing I'm taking away from this conversation is the power of putting in the reps. Joe started working in the ski industry at 14 and spent decades building experience across multiple resorts in every corner of the business, building deep relationships along the way. That experience and those relationships became his most powerful asset. It was because he knew the right people and had built a strong reputation that he got the calls about new opportunities. He says he likes to walk through open doors, but first he had to put himself in a position where those doors would appear. And it was because he understood the industry so deeply that he could see the challenges worth solving. He didn't start Snow Partners with just a cool idea. He started it with a strong point of view on the unique needs of the industry, earned over years of experience as a practitioner. And all of his opportunities built on each other. His early work at Mountain Creek led to a job at Interwest. which gave him the foundation to launch his consulting work, which gave him the credibility to be brought in to lead Big Snow, which led back to Mountain Creek, and Mountain Creek's success then funded the next businesses. It's a good reminder that you're not just building a company, you're building a body of work, and each piece sets up the next in ways you might not even be able to imagine yet. If you liked this episode, please take a minute to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review. It helps more people discover the show and the great entrepreneurs telling their stories here. This is Dana Moriello, and I can't wait to see you next week on This is a Thing.